Today we're going to look at John 15, verse 12. And I put the Greek up here just because it's fun if you know it, but you don't need to know it in order to get some benefit out of this video. So it says, "This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I loved you." This is an interesting passage because actually if you back up just a couple of chapters, you'll see that Jesus says the same thing to his disciples in John 13, verse 34, and extending on into 35. He says, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." So the fact that this appears twice in the Gospel of John tells us it's an important theme. Then, of course, if you fast forward or flip a few pages to the right or scroll further in your New Testament to the letter of 1 John and look in chapter 3, verses 16 through 17, you'll find a very similar phrase and turn of thought there. It says, "We know love by this, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for one another. How does God's love abide in anyone who has the world's goods and sees a brother or sister in need and yet refuses to help?" And so we see from these three verses that this idea that we've learned how to love from the way that Christ has loved us is a critical theme in the Gospel of John and in the letters of John as well. So then another thing that we notice, if we continue on to this next verse in chapter 15, verse 13, it says, "No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." What's interesting about this is that Jesus hasn't died when he's issuing this command to his disciples. He hasn't died for them yet. He will, and in many ways, he's preparing them for what's about to happen. If you back up to John 13, you know that, in fact, the wheels are already turning for Jesus's arrest and his eventual crucifixion. And so he is laying the groundwork for them to understand what exactly he's done for them as the events of the next days and weeks unfold before them. And so John 15 is sort of leading the disciples in this particular way. And so even though he hasn't died for them, he is showing them how to understand what his death means and how they should imitate it. Now, if we compare these two verses in John 15 and John 13, you can actually find a very small and subtle difference, but a church father by the name of Saint Augustine made a big deal about it, and I think it's really pretty interesting. So if you can't notice, there is a small nuance between the way that the commandment is described. In John 15, Jesus says, "This is my commandment." In John 13, he says, "This is a new commandment." Now, this is an easy detail to overlook, and it's something that many people might credit just to stylistic difference, and that's fine. But Christian tradition has always suggested that, in fact, these small differences, these small details, can carry enormous significance in a passage of Scripture. And so St. Augustine would argue that, in fact, there is a major significance in this detail. And he asks this question. He says, "But what he said in this way here, 'This is my commandment,' as if there were none else, if there were no other commandment, what are we to think of, my brethren?" So Augustine is saying, why is Jesus acting like he only has one commandment to give his disciples? And Augustine goes on to suggest that what Jesus is doing is actually saying that sort of the whole law, all of the commandments can be bottled up into this one thing: love people the way I have loved you. Love people the way Christ has loved us. If you do that, you can fulfill all the commandments of the law. And we know this is a theme that comes up in other areas in the New Testament as well. So it seems that Jesus is saying this: if we love one another in the way Christ has loved us, we will fulfill the whole law, even without thinking about it. Jesus need not give us another commandment if we will just obey this one rule. And so that's a beautiful picture of what's happening here in John 15, verse 12, and I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you want to dig deeper into Bible study, I have a link for a trial for Logos Bible software, which is a great resource. And then also every month I host a Bible study challenge, and the first Monday of every month is when it starts. And so if you're interested in just taking about 10 minutes every day during the week, Monday through Friday, to learn more about the Bible and to dive into particular topics, I'd invite you to check out the link in the description below. All right, I'll talk to you soon.